afternoon's meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. Today is June 23rd, 2026. We're going to be back up to item 9A, discussion and action, order and resolution 2606-2313, the matter of adopting the 26-27 Lane County budget. I believe, Commissioner Trieger, we left off with you or had some questions or concerns you would like to bring up or like to continue?
I don't need to be in the queue first. Thank you, Chair. We'll give it some time for others who didn't have a chance in our short time that we had this morning.
Okay,
See where we land.
sounds good. I will go, unless, Ms. Moody, are you still waiting for board direction, I assume still?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So to the board, do we have any deliberation or discussion?
Chair, I might.
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
I appreciate everything that was said this morning. There's a lot there, a lot of advocates for different agencies who have a vested interest in what the county does. So I want to thank them for taking the time, sharing their thoughts, both in person and in email format if they weren't able to make it. We clearly have a big decision in front of us. And I have two proposals that I thought I'd share and get feedback as to if people are interested in this. The first of which is, I think, relatively minor compared to the TLT discussion, but the first one is that I would like to propose or make a motion that we discontinue our commissioner accounts that we get each year, our discretionary accounts, and that would was normally $15,000 each. In the proposed budget, it's $12,000 each. So for 5 of us, that's $60,000. And move that to public safety in the general fund for those purposes. I do that because we are in a very tight budget space. We all need to contribute to the issues. We all have expressed in the past that we've used those for good intentions and continue to do so. But we are seeing people's jobs at stake here. We know that we need to fund the TLT or the main budget, and we need to look over every rock or under every rock in order to find ways to help with the cause. And I think this is a way that the commissioners can do that. Yes, it's been used in good ways in the past, but we have to do whatever we can to help mitigate our budget issues. So that is my first proposal. And I'd like to just see what everybody thinks about that before I move on to my second proposal.
To the board?
I'd like to see the rest of it before I.
Sure, I'll second it so we can have a discussion about it.
Okay.
Sure.
We have a motion made by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Trieger to remove the commissioner's funds, remaining funds of $12,000 apiece for a total of $60,000. Discussion?
They're 15,000.
Just to be clear, that's for public safety purposes in the general fund.
Correct, yes. Commissioner Trieger?
Thank
to the
you.
motion?
To the motion, I have a question for staff. So this is our discretionary account funds that have historically been $15,000. They've been reduced in this proposed budget, the budget before us, to $12,000. And this is a proposal to eliminate them and move the money over to public safety, which I would support. But I do, before I fully support it, have a question. We also have, commissioners also have a fund that covers expenses related to commissioners doing commissioner business on behalf of the board, like travel to Association of Oregon Counties, if we, or, NACO, National Association of Counties Events, or so on. So that fund is not what Commissioner Buck's referring to, right? These are our individual discretionary accounts that each of us can do essentially what we will with. But that other fund remains, is that correct?
Commissioner Trieger, Board, yes, that is my understanding of what she just stated. Yes,
Great,
correct.
thank you. And that was your intention, Commissioner Buck? Was just for the individual discretionary office accounts?
Yes,
Thank you.
at this point, yeah.
Thanks.
I'll vote against this for reasons I've articulated clearly in the past.
Commissioner Lovell?
Chair, I would agree with Commissioner Farr. I think there's a lot of good that each individual commissioner can do for their district, and at their discretion, it's important. I think this is more of a virtue signal than it is actual fix. $60,000 is a lot of money to a lot of us in the community. When we're talking about a $1.2 billion budget, its impact is minimal.
Yeah, I supported removing the 3K, but I would like to keep the 12K for reasons stated. A lot of small communities that I help in my district, and whether that's school districts or small public works departments that don't have enough money for cold patch and things. It goes a long ways to put in those communities. So I would like to keep those discretionary funds. And as in the past, most of it has been turned over. It wasn't spent, but I would like to remain, I would like to hold on to those funds. But there's a bit of motion and seconded, so I guess we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion fails 2-3 with Lovell, Senega, and Farr, and nay. Do you have some more motions you were considering, Commissioner Buck, Vice Chair?
Yeah, so I have another proposal. This one is more intended to discuss the TLT portion of our earlier discussion. We've been shown that we have some non-committed reserves, and we've also been informed about the 20% minimum reserve needs for the county. I'm hesitant to change the 20% minimum reserves because I don't want to jeopardize the financial stability of the county. And I think that will have an impact on our reports, our auditing reports, and it will also have an impact on our potential bond rating for future investments from the county. So I just wanted to share that up front, that I don't think that we should go below the 20% minimum reserve amount that we've set for our general fund, for all the reasons that were laid out this morning. But we do have some non-committed reserves. Also, over the lunch break, we received an email from our Public Works Director regarding what impacts it would mean to road programs and staffing in the Public Works Department if we were to utilize reserves that are otherwise dedicated towards road improvement. And given the financial difficulty of that, and separately than this proposal, I don't think that we should dip into those road reserve funds. So I'd like to propose somewhat of a compromise to Commissioner Farr's earlier proposal, which is utilizing some of the non-committed reserves to minimize the impact on the TLT proposal in the budget. Now, how much of that I think we should talk about if there's other interested parties, specifically because we know this isn't likely going to be the only time that some departments come to us over the course of this next fiscal year where they've also have some budget impacts and will request some of those non-committed reserves if they don't have enough reserves within their own departmental funds. So one thing that I'm thinking of is we could use 1.7 of the non-committed reserves. That would, then we can use that for the planning for the courthouse. And then we have at least minimized some of the impact of utilizing the TLT money. So I'll leave it there and see if there's any feedback from my colleagues.
Okay. To the board.
Sure.
Commissioner Lovell.
So Commissioner Buck, are you proposing then to use 1.7 of the 2.7 non-committed funds for the courthouse, but then taking the remainder, which, I mean, I got so many numbers in my head, is that 5.8 million that would still need for public safety that we would take from?
Just about 4.8.
4.8, okay, yeah. I knew it was something, 0.8, 4.8. So you're suggesting then taking $4.8 million from either the TLT reserve, and are you also suggesting not touching any of the 2% allocations that the board made in 2022?
So what I'm specifically proposing is adjusting the budget that's been presented by 1.7 million in non-committed reserves for the purposes of planning for the courthouse, as that was an identified dollar amount in the budget. That's the change.
So then the rest of the public safety funds are suggested to come from where? I'm kind of confused, I'm sorry.
Everything else in the proposed budget from our administrator would stay the same.
Gotcha, okay, that's clear. So you'd be taking the $4.8 million from the TLT reserve?
Everything else would remain the same as proposed by the administrator.
I'm just trying to make the public aware of what we're talking about here.
Well, I'm trying to be, as transparent as possible. We have significant impacts to our financial stability if we utilize anything more or any of the 20% minimum reserves in the general fund. That's been made very clear from our administrator. And our public works director just sent us the email about what it would mean to utilize the reserves out of the road fund and the impact to our local 626 members, as well as admin pro and those members in FTE that would have to be cut if we utilize that money. I don't want to do that. I don't want to jeopardize road fund and staffing that way. And I don't want to jeopardize the overall financial stability of the organization by dipping below the 20% minimum reserves. So that leaves us, if you are on the same wavelength as myself, that leaves us with the non-committed reserves that has been pointed out to be 2.7 million. So my proposal is being able to use 1.7 of that to minimize TLT impact and leaving about $1 million left for other things that are going to come up over the course of the year.
So I guess I have a question for our administrator. In your opinion, you said the other day you had a meeting with the Moody's folks, and you had mentioned that they had mentioned that we would not suffer any bond rating, and they had told us what our new bond rating would be, which you said it was unusual. I guess my question is that a hard stop to the rating of being second from the highest at 20%? And would 18.5% automatically kick us down to a third level lower of the Moody's bond rating, or do we know that at all? Or are we just guessing?
We do not know that, and I'm not saying it would happen if you made this change. I'm just expressing a concern that part of the reason that we received the bond rating increase in 2017 and then again in 2019 was because of all the things that we've done, which include building up our reserves, having policies in place, building a reserve up to 20% minimum. So the bond rating agencies, not surprisingly, favor that. They like that approach. It's a good, sound financial approach that helps to solidify the bond rating that we have. So I'm not suggesting that if you take this action, it will result in, I'm saying it's a consideration, it's something that you should consider. You know, maybe there's, if you choose to do this, if the board makes an effort to try to build back up the reserve to 20%, I think there are things you can do to mitigate or signal, you know, we're gonna, certainly there are emergencies, there are true emergencies that we could face that we would need to dip into that 20%. And if we did that, I would hope that we would make an effort over a period of time to replenish those reserves. So hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner.
Yeah, it does. I would hope that we would consider the public safety an emergency too, so, and at least I do. I also am reminded about a conversation we had when we were talking about the capital improvement funds to our public service building, and that my question then is how much of our bond rating percentage are we extended? I would also think that the Moody's Corporation or their deciding firm would look at both our reserves and our debt-to-income ratio and our ability to pay back bond money. So the answer that I got from there was we were only 4%, give or take, extended on the amount of total money that the county could borrow. So as far as the financial position that we're in, the risk to our reserves, if I'm speaking just from a business person's mind here, and our debt-to-income ratio is so extremely low that I would not see that us taking the reserves that we need down to 18.5% would affect our overall ability of being financially stable. Would you agree with that?
I mean, that would be, I'd be speculating if I told you that I agreed or disagreed with that. That's a decision by the bond rating agencies. They look at multiple factors, both within your organization and within your community. What they said they like about Lane County, what they've historically said, and what they said 2 weeks ago is, we like your financial management. You have sound financial management practices. You have good policies. You have low debt. So they do like the fact that we have low debt. Of course, you know, we have a lot of capacity, but issuing more debt is contingent upon having the ability to repay that debt. So that's part of you know, investors want to know that a governmental entity, if it's going to borrow money, if investors are going to make an investment, that the entity has the ability to repay that investment. That's what they want to know. So that's what these things help to do, is they, you know, reserves, assets that we have, our liquidity, all of those things help to signal that we are in a good, strong financial position and we have the ability to pay off our debt. So,
To your recollection, in the history of Lane County, have we ever missed a debt payment?
Not in my time, Commissioner.
been here longer than I have.
Yeah,
20 years?
26.
Yeah,
Who's counting?
I'd say for the last third century, we're pretty diligent about paying our bills.
Yeah. I do want to share one thing, though, that our financial advisors have advised, and when we changed our policy to be the 20% minimum, there has been advice to us that it's important to meet your policy. So we have a policy of 20%. So when we violate our own policy, it is something that GFOA wants us to point out in our budget document. So when we adopted that policy, there was conversation about, okay, you've done that adoption. It's important to stay with policy from our financial advisors.
And is that something that, to back up Commissioner Farr's question, is that something we need to bring a board order back to change that policy and be within compliance if we make a vote today?
If you really want to change your policy and have it be below 20%, otherwise policy speaks to using the part of it and then having a plan. So we would really need a plan to get it back up, as the administrator has noted. Yeah, unless the board really wanted to say we're not going to have a minimum 20%. So I think maybe.
That makes sense. You could keep your policy at 20% and say, well, we're just going to dip into the 20%, go to 18 or 18.5, but our goal is to build back up to 20. In that scenario, if that was your intention and your direction and said you wanted to do that within a year or 2 years, we'd have to have a plan to come up with those resources to accomplish that. Then you should keep your policy. If you truly believe that the reserve should be at 20%, you should keep the policy there and commit to establishing the reserves at 20%. If you want to change does that make sense? If you want to change the policy for the long term and say, yeah, we think 20% is too high, we want to just be at 18 or 18.5, and that's where we're going to sit, then you should change the policy. I'd advise you actually leave the policy as it is. You know, if you want to dip below the 20%, but provide direction and make a concerted effort over the next year to 2 years to build back up to 20%. I think that's the better financial move.
I mean, just for the.
I think that would be appreciated and valued by the bond rating agencies and our auditors more than reducing the policy.
I guess we haven't even discussed what is the 20% normal of our 5 comparator counties that we always compare to? Is that a typical percentage? Or are we above normal or below or what?
What Moody's will look at is reserves actually sit higher than that. And even ours does. If they just do the pure math, they're just doing the pure math of what's sitting in reserves, whether it's committed or not. So, I showed you that you've committed some of it, but it's still sitting there. So they will do the math and say, you're over 20%. So, but we see that counties have pretty large reserves. And they look a little more nationally, not just at our 5 comparables. So they're going to compare us to counties of similar size across the whole nation. And what are they doing with reserves? And they vary a lot, but they're pretty high. They're usually more than 20% that people are actually holding in reserves.
All right, good, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say that that email we received during lunch was a little different information than I had originally received when we talked about using road funds. It was probably delaying projects. It wasn't actual FTE, was my understanding. So, to Farr's original point made before lunch, what if we used all 2.7 non-committed funds, drew down to 18% and used the rest as, a good way of showing that everybody's partnered in this to help keep our public safety whole. That would be something that I would support. Commissioner Trieger?
Thank you, Chair. 2 parts. One related to that, I was going to ask, I see our Public Works Director, I see Dan Hurley's who sent us that email. I'm not sure everybody had a chance to read it in full and digest it, no pun intended, over the lunch hour. So I didn't know if it would be helpful for him to come up and share a little more about what's in it, and so others tuning in can. And then I had something else back to the broader topic, but.
Yeah, we're still.
If you're interested, since we're talking about impacts on the road fund and that particular strategy proposal.
Well, yeah, still board conversation. So any further deliberations with the board, Commissioner Farr, to that comment?
I don't wish to continue this conversation. I'm not going to vote in favor of this most recent proposal, but we currently have 2.7 beyond the 20% in general fund reserve. How did we get there from 22 from? And I know the answer to this question, but funds came in that allowed us to go in excess of $20 million. So if we were to dip to 18.5%, you mentioned, Ms. Moody, that the reserve fund is typically replenished by unspent money in departments, which would include, I would presume, unfilled vacancies.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr, Board. So correct. We are doing our best to project with vacancies, what we think our variance will be across the fund, which does typically sit just a little bit higher than what we come in at the vacancy variance, because we don't want to bring it clear down to 0. When we're saying 5% vacancy variance for general fund, it might be that we're running, 5.5, close to 6. But that can vary by department as well. So when it is replenished, yes, it is typically from underspending. Now, I will say that, I do want to, this is all a plan for 26, 27. I am guessing at where we end on June 30th of this year. I have already assumed departments will underspend in the current fiscal year because we've got history of that happening. So when I'm trying to come up with the fund balance for the next year, beginning fund balance, I'm already assuming we're going to underspend in the year before. So I've already assumed that for these numbers. So I would not assume that we'll have more. I mean, things can change, but again, this is a plan. These are projections of where we're going to end up. So if anything changes, these reserve numbers change because the reserve's kind of at the bottom, right? We hold our 20%, make sure that stays there. Then it depends on how we spend and what we end up with reserves. So it replenishes, but as we mentioned, the reason it became so large was because of the ARPA money. That's not typical. Typical is we have a little bit of excess. Right.
So when Ms. Morkowski suggests that as opposed to revising our policy, we present a plan to replenish the 15%, and that plan, I'm presuming that we could put forward a viable plan, and with goals to achieve the milestones in the plan. And you don't need to answer that. I mean, that's just typical budgeting. You can do that. You can do that whether it's your household or wherever you put money aside and you take care of the issues. So so for me, I remember the times that you talked about, Ms. Morkowski, before you were here, when we were shaking in our boots. You know, we were in one, when you applied for the position, one of the other applicants said, well, here's Lane County bobbing along the bottom. And you know what? He was right. We were bobbing along the bottom, but we're not bobbing along the bottom. We have flexibility, we have opportunity, and if we keep the entire 2% accumulated and for the future intact, that money's still there. It's not going away, and future boards, which may or may not include me, can get into that money at any time they want. The money's not gone. The money is there. It still is in a reserve fund that, by order of the legislature, we can use. So my incentive for going below the 20% on this, for this particular budget and using road funds, is that we can absorb that currently. Couldn't do it 2 years in a row, but we could do it 1 year, much the same as we would be for 1 2-year span, much the same as we would be with the TRT funds, and we would still have the same opportunities 1 year from now or 2 years from now to take a look at the TRT funds if some future board wanted to. That money's not going away; it's still there. So, Ms. Morkowski, you say you don't like speculation. I hate speculation. Speculation is putting a buck in a slot machine and knowing you've just given $1 away. You know, you speculate on winning, and you're probably not going to win. I don't like speculation. I like the plan. And I like knowing that we're in a solid position to enact a plan. That's the only reason I would even consider putting this forward at this point in time, is that I do believe personally, not through speculation, but through analysis, that we can replenish the money up to 20% in the reserve fund over a period of time. This would be a one-time adjustment and looking to the future for a permanent solution, a permanent, ongoing, stable solution for public safety. That's not what this provides. This provides as a bridge, Mr. Morkowski, the same as the using TRT funds would provide as a bridge. Same bridge exactly. The same girders, the same, everything's the same. So for me, it's just a matter of where we take the money from, and it's a signal to me that that we are doing what we said we would do when we initially levied the 2% or put the 2% additional on with the approval of the travel industry. They liked it because they knew that it was going into travel-related issues for the future. If we did the same thing and told them, oh, by the way, we don't know if we'd give you all of that, I don't know that they would have supported it 2.5 years ago. And consequently, in order to maintain our trust with a group of business people and beyond, it's not just advocates. These are the people of Lane County that we're talking about. In order to maintain our trust with them, we're not doing anything speculative at all here. This is not speculative, the proposal that I have. And I believe it would everything would remain intact. And with a plan in place to replenish the 15% that would drop below the 20%, the 1.5%, we would drop below 20%, that we would not lose our favor with Moody's and not lose our favor with the public and not lose our favor when we are asking for a permanent solution sometime in the not too distant future for our public safety funding. And to me, that's very important.
So, and just to clarify, because I'm going to ask Mr. Hurley some questions here in a second, you're proposing the 2.7 non-committed and drawing down to 8.5 and the rest of it from roads.
Correct.
Okay. Well, we should be about 20 minutes into Jeff Orlandani's discussion here, which is not going to be great either. So what would this look like for Public Works and roads funds?
Chair, we'll have to look at that in more detail. The email I sent you over lunch talked about if the 6.4, 6.5 was diverted, that would be about 8 to 10 full-time equivalent employees that would need to be laid off so that we can start to begin to stabilize, plus deferring projects, which have an impact because there's some matching funds that we're expecting for some of those projects. So to close a gap of about 1.3, we're probably looking at a couple FTE, and we will need to look at the projects. The problem is that I sent you a graph that shows the depleting reserves. We're living off reserves now. So, we're living off our savings account for our ongoing regular expenses. The projection was to have that completely depleted in just a little over 5 years. So if we shrink that timeline, we need to speed up our efforts to try to stabilize, because we can't run that down to zero where we have no money for future projects, because then we're laying off most of our engineering staff, and then we'll have to contract out all that work, which will be more expensive, and it'll be very hard to rebuild. So we were in a similar situation pre-2017, where we were coming to the edge of this financial cliff, and we were then kept alive by the transportation package back then. We were hoping to see the same thing with this last session, and we didn't get a transportation package. So we're facing that cliff. So any funds that are diverted away from the road fund just speeds up that process.
Chair, I need a clarification on that. That 8 FTEs are being funded out of reserves. So we'd have to fire them because we are using reserves that we're already committed to spending on. This is new information, Dan, that we're spending reserves to keep people employed.
Sure. We are using our reserve fund, our territorial reserve fund, to fund, I think it's 6 maintenance employees and 2 engineering employees. And we can't keep doing that. So we need to, if we're going to speed up the timeline of when we're going to run out of those reserves, we're going to have to make FTE reductions to begin to stabilize.
So you're saying that this is a very complex graph that you've put in front of us. We've seen the same graph before. It's not a new thing to us, but you are saying that if we take money out of the road fund reserve, we will be firing employees in 2027, 2026, 2027.
Commissioner, there are other ways you could do it where you just eat more into reserves. All I'm saying is that's
one of the options is firing. One of the options is firing employees, but that's not the only option. Okay, thank you.
It's not the only option, but we will need to look at that in the near future.
Okay. To the board?
Is Commissioner Farr ready to make a motion?
I think, do we have a motion on the table?
We do have a motion on the table, and the chair asked if there were other
It's
questions,
been-
and I
Has
raised my
it been
hand.
seconded? I'm sorry, I had the floor.
Yes, it has.
It has been seconded. Okay, I just want to be clear.
You
I
took
want to
the
get
floor, you don't
process.
have the floor. I raised my hand to be recognized when the chair asked if there were questions.
I acknowledged him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's been a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Commissioner Farr's motion is to go down to 18.5%, use the rest as road reserves. We're still talking about it. Director Hurley said that there's a possibility we could lose 8 to 10 Public Works employees in this maneuver. I would just, obviously this is a hard place to be. I don't want to diminish the fact that people might be losing their jobs, but we're in a countywide, statewide, nationwide series of retraction. We're coming back. We're going to have to tighten our belt, start again, make new visions and new goals. And this may be part of that. And right now, the most important part of us as a board is, I would like to remind our board members, is our public safety is paramount. If we don't have public safe, we don't have a community. So this is a way to fund public safety. It gets us in a sense of urgency to bring us back to the table to find permanent solutions. It keeps our word with the travel entity. And I want to add a comment too that Commissioner Trieger said that there was no plan about the TLTs and the Travel Lane County's winter sports arena. I think that's a mistake, and I think that's a mistaken statement. They've had different tours of sites. They have sites available. We're doing a feasibility study. And the thing that's lacking in pushing the winter sports arena forward is a commitment from the county to the funds they already have to back an idea. That's what's holding us up. Being part of the Travel Lane County Committee, I know this intimately. Travel Lane County is willing to put $2 million into this of their own reserves. They're committed to the process. They just need the county to come to the table and commit to the process with them. And then we can go on to some economic development and actually make some money in this county.
Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. The motion that's on the floor right now is not Commissioner Farr's motion with the road fund. It's Commissioner Buck's motion that she just made this afternoon session. I see she has her hand up as well. And I wasn't tracking which of us was in the queue first. So.
I called you.
Thank you. Those are interesting comments, Commissioner Lovall, because it makes it really clear that what is happening here is we are usurping a rigorous, integrous budget process and a budget adoption process to try to backdoor a decision about an initiative that is underway to make a decision, but that decision about whether or not the highest and best value use of those dollars is for this community to invest in an indoor sport facility is its own item that we are not discussing. We're discussing budget adoption. So if you're trying to backdoor a decision about that through the budget process, that's wholly inappropriate. I do want to put into the record, because the Public Safety Funding Task Force's recommendation specifically regarding transient lodging tax has been mentioned. And so I wanted, and our administrator clarified, but I'm going to read exactly from the task force report, because they took a number of strategies and said, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges for that particular strategy? Some of those strategies are payroll tax, increased tipping fees, income tax, entertainment fees, public safety district. Some are longer term, some shorter term, but transient lodging tax is listed. And under opportunities, it says the task force recommended enhanced public safety supports rather than detracts from the ultimate goal of transient lodging tax funding, which is to support and attract tourist dollars to Lane County and its communities. And under the challenges column, it says the legislature would need to approve changes to current law in order to support this strategy. So it's a misrepresentation of what's in this report for people to say even this task force didn't think we should use transient lodging tax funds for public safety. It's not what it says. The legislature has approved changes to current law to support this strategy, and much of the testimony, as I listened in Salem, spoke specifically to the impacts of tourism on our public safety system. It is not a disconnected cause and effect. Every single one of us up here recognizes we need to grow economic opportunity in our community. Every single one of us agrees we need to partner with many industries, including our tourism partners. They need to partner with us too. And every single one of us has said public safety is a number one. We have an opportunity, we have a fund available to use as a bridge while we work on a long-term solution for public safety system funding, and that is in our transient lodging tax fund. For us to do these maneuvers, and again, as I said this morning, eat our seed corn and spend down things like reserves and a road fund that is already distressed, feels irresponsible to me. And I will not be supporting anything that eats into the road fund in particular, and I'm still weighing even supporting spending uncommitted reserves when we have the funds available. They've been identified, they've been vetted, they've been discussed. Our budget committee community members have weighed in, and that's where I stand. And again, this is not taking money away from any existing tourism support. We are spending upwards, approaching $12 million on tourism related initiatives in Lane County in the coming year, right? 4.4 million of which to Travel Lane, and the rest to a number of different parks and museums and our own Lane Event Center. So this is not short shrifting an investment in tourism or doing anything other than indicating this county's commitment to that sector. And I want to make that very clear. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, any more discussion to this motion? Vice Chair Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Part of my concern about dipping below 20% minimum reserve is that we don't actually have a committed plan right now as to how we would replenish that. And given the financial outlook that we are seeing from the federal administration and the state of Oregon, I'm very concerned that we would be able to have a manageable plan to replenish those over the course of the next few years. I don't think it's viable to use the road fund, as I mentioned earlier, and hearing Mr. Hurley, Director Hurley, talk about what that impact would be. If we had some kind of viable plan in front of us for replenishing reserves, I might feel differently. But I struggle to see how that's even plausible. And we most definitely will have other departments coming up to us during the course of the year. So I just urge everybody to seriously consider my proposal and know that I absolutely, as I propose this, I absolutely support our transient and lodging tax industry. I'm trying to minimize the impact as much as possible in the proposal. If we didn't have to use it and we could find another way that wouldn't impact our financial stability as an organization, I would definitely do it. I just think this is a responsible approach. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's all the discussion, Commissioner Farr.
And, I'm not refuting anything, just a direct quote here from the co-chair's letter. It's equally clear that any long-term solution must be rooted in building and maintaining public trust. Trust that Lane County's leadership is unified, trust in stewardship of public funds, and trust that public safety investments will prioritize tangible outcomes for the community, which trust will be earned only through disciplined prioritization. And for me, the trust is one of the main elements that we're looking at right here. And when we enacted the 2%, it was under a set of rules that the travel industry, and we all understood that it would all go for tourist facilities. At the time, it was a ballpark stadium, it was a ball stadium, but that fell through. That didn't happen. That didn't diminish the fact that that's why we put that 2% in there. And if we change that at this point in time, I worry about the diminished trust that would be established by giving the money and then taking it away.
So we don't have a second for Commissioner Buck's motion.
Yeah, we do. I seconded it. That's why we're having this discussion. This was discussion to that motion.
Okay, I'm just going
Yep.
by who's watching the webcast of, okay. Told otherwise, but to the motion, all those in favor signify with an aye.
Do you want to restate the motion for the record, or
Go ahead. You
No.
seconded it.
Commissioner Buck?
The motion is that we would approve the budget as presented with one change, which is to transfer $1.7 million of non-committed reserves to the use of the courthouse planning specific in the budget proposal.
Okay. To Commissioner Buck's motion, all those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Did you vote, Commissioner? Buck?
No.
Nay? Okay. Motion fails 2-3 with Seneca, Lovell, and Farr, and nay. To the board. Commissioner Farr.
I would move that the existing budget be replaced by spending the general fund reserve down to 18.5% and filling in the balance through road fund reserve.
Second?
Just to clarify, is that using the 2.7 and non-committed also?
Including the 2.7 non-committed, and down to 18.5% in the general fund. Inherent in that motion is the understanding that a plan needs to be put in place to replenish the money in the general fund reserve up to 20%.
We have a motion by Commissioner Farr to use the 2.7 of non-committed funds, take our reserve down to 18.5, and fill the rest of the public safety whole with road reserve funds by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Discussion.
The motion.
To the motion.
You know, I've been around this county a long time, and I've been here when we had far less than 20% in reserves, far less than 18.5% in reserves. In fact, compared to prior to your joining us, Mr. Mokrajewski, 18.5 would have been a luxury that we wouldn't even dream of. But you've gotten us up to that point. It's a very stable point to be at, and Moody's has recognized us twice because of not just that, but the other financial management that we've taken part in. This is one part of it, spending the reserve fund down to 18.5%. And I picked that number carefully, 18.5 instead of 18%. So that being said, I think, again, things have to be looked at in historic perspective quite often, and historic perspective is only available to you if you were there when it was that way. And Ms. Moody, you've been here longer than I have, and Director Williams, you've been here longer than I have. So you remember when 18.5 would have been wonderful. And to my point to that is that 18.5 is well above the reserves that we need for emergency purposes. Doesn't give us what we would like by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not untenable, and it is one that we can, through time, replace back to 20%.
Sure.
Yes. Can you clarify how much is coming out of the road reserve fund at this point then with these numbers? I'm roughly, I'm at 1.3-ish.
Actually, it's 1.9 because of the change from 18 to 18 and a half. So it'd be 1,941, 892 to be exact, from the road fund. Can we also clarify, there's been no mention of the ongoing 1%, which in the approved budget is going to the capital fund for the courthouse complex?
That's not a part of this motion.
Okay.
Discussion? The motion?
Well, we've been hashing a lot of things. I just want to make sure the public's clear on what we're doing. We're taking our reserves down to 18.5%. We're taking all of our 2.7% of uncommitted reserve funds. We are not allowing any of the TLT percentages to be put forth toward public safety. We're preserving the 2% that we allocated, and the TLT reserves will be not dipped into. Is that what we're understanding?
The 2% ongoing is not a part of this motion. It's just the reserve, the accumulated reserve that's a part of this motion. It would be a second motion for the ongoing 2%.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, and thank you for the correction. I was still at 18%. Director Hurley, you said there's more than one way to find this money, and one of them doesn't include layoffs.
We don't have other options, Chair, of funding other than the highway fund. So we've tried going to the voters for a vehicle registration tax. We've approached the board a few times looking at a stormwater fee, and there hasn't been a lot of interest. So we're limited to the funds we receive from the state. So we are running out of funds to be able to provide the capital projects that we need to and the ongoing road maintenance. So we are drawing down our reserves for future projects. Again, the projection was to run out of those funds entirely in a little over 5 years. So if we're taking close to $2 million out of that, that's just backing up that timeline. So our two options are to lay off staff to reduce our expenditures or to reduce our projects. So we have a couple key projects on the slate for next year, and we're only doing pavement preservation. We're not doing capacity improvements. We're just doing pavement preservation, which is so key to maintain our infrastructure over its lifetime rather than waiting for these roads to fall apart and have to pay more to rebuild them. So we're looking at a key project for Marcola Road and Lorraine Highway that is just pavement preservation and safety improvements. So we will either have to not do those projects, which means that we don't have a way to keep our existing employees fully utilized because we have construction inspectors and surveyors who are planning to do those projects. So there's really not any sense to keep those employees on if we don't have projects for them. So really, either way, we're probably looking at having to lay off staff.
I was going to say to the motion, yeah, go ahead.
That's confusing me a little bit, Dan, based on the conversation that we had. And last Thursday, I had a conversation regarding the Territorial Highway Fund and the reserves in the Territorial Highway Fund, which a number I heard there was 40%. So the Marcola Road and what was the other project?
And Commissioner, let me continue. So we could also just continue to pull from reserves and not lay off staff. So that is another option. I'm just saying that just creates a bigger problem down the road when we need to right-size the ability to provide services with the funding that we receive.
So laying off staff is not our only option, and we don't have to lay off staff.
So we would need to dip into reserves further. Yes,
And not lay off staff.
correct.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard you say, but then I thought I heard you refute that. So, okay, thank you.
I'm just looking out over the long term. Unless we have some other solution for funding, the state is looking to us to generate local revenue. I don't think we can anticipate that the state's going to bail us out with a large transportation package. So I'm looking out over the long term of how we maintain these assets. And if we don't have the ability to fund the existing staff and projects, then we're going to look at reductions down the road because we're eating into reserves. So that territorial reserve is only a fraction of what we need. So we took on Territorial Highway from the state several years ago. I forget the exact number, about 40 million we received for that, I believe. The needs for that highway exceed $100 million. And so there are significant safety issues and long-term road stability issues with that highway. And so we just have greater need going into the future than we can afford at this point.
That muddied the water for me, quite frankly. I'm not sure what you're saying, Dan.
Commissioner Farr, I'm saying that we do have reserves for Territorial Highway. Those pay for staff. So again, we're using our savings account to pay for ongoing needs, knowing that we're going to run out of reserves in that Territorial Highway Fund at some point. But right now we have about 6 road maintenance employees that are doing the work on Territorial Highway. In addition to that, the zone there, and we're paying for that out of a reserve fund, which is limited. We're not adding funds to that. If we're not receiving SRS funds, that was our way of replenishing our Territorial Highway reserve. But if we're not going to receive that, those funds will eventually diminish and end over time.
So we don't have to lay off staff.
I'm saying that we don't have to lay off staff at this moment if we're going to dip further into reserves, but we will have to lay off more staff in future years if we don't start reductions to stabilize now.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Farr, I have a question on your motion. You're very specific about 18.5. So my number was, I was still on 18 and 1.3. What's 18.5? Why are we on that number?
Was to provide additional buffer between the remaining fund, general fund, and the required emergency, which Ms. Moody, you said was 17.7, I think, is the number we use as kind of a cellar number or bottom floor number.
Sorry, as our emergency reserve is 17%, and then our
17.0.
service stabilization is 3. So going to 18.5, you'd be taking half of the service stabilization reserve. It's all part of the 20, 17 plus 3. Yes, yeah.
Chair, if you don't mind, if I could speak to the road fund piece just briefly.
Please do, that would be great.
Thank you. And I just want to first state, listening to the public comment this morning and even since May, when this issue came up, I've been listening really intently. I know the challenge is challenging, and I get all perspectives, and I just wanted to briefly state, looking at the road fund this morning, just knowing that was initially brought up as a conversation, briefly hearing from, Oren Schumacher and Sasha that are much more involved and deeply connected than I am, just looking at the financial outlook of the road fund, which I wasn't as familiar with recently until just now. And I think the thing that surprised me, looking at how much the road fund reserves has been depleted over the years, was a little bit shocking to me. And I think it's worth just stating too, I think you heard a little bit in the budget committee from the Public Works Department. And I just, looking at the numbers, the revenue in Public Works for road fund is not looking great. And so looking at the forecast from what I saw this morning, as Director Hurley mentioned, it's pretty dire. I think, we're in a really critical and unique spot in Public Works by having a significant draw on those public road fund dollars in the reserves. And so looking at expenses, they're truly going up faster than our revenue. And as we know, outlook on revenue for road fund is not great. But I know you're in that situation with a lot of funds here at the county, and I just wanted to, again, say, I think Public Works has done a great job of being good partners with the Sheriff's Office and trying to share SRS funds and trying to share the timber receipts and doing their part in doing the public's good, the best that we can for county funds. And I just wanted to say yet again, I know you're in a really hard spot, and I appreciate and I hear the frustration and the passion from everybody that spoke to it. And I would just say, if that's truly the direction that you might be headed in, I wanted to respectfully ask that you consider, either replenishing the road fund at some capacity, as well as we're talking about, a plan to replenish the general fund, and just looking at other ways, because while we have many options to deal with how to address a cut to that effect and that magnitude in the road fund, we do have many options, as Director Hurley mentioned. None of those are going to be good, and I think it'll just lead us to a faster approach to potentially laying off folks in the very near future, as we're trying to have, really critical conversations with our partners and with the state, but knowing that revenue is challenging. People are getting creative out there at Public Works, and I just wanted to make another plea to try and see if there could be any other replenishment or creative thinking. I did appreciate County Administrator's recommendation, and again, I also acknowledge you all are in a hard spot, and so I just wanted to offer that too, as I was looking at road fund aspects as well. So we'll do what we can to maintain, but I think we're in a really critical and unique spot with the road fund, and just wanted to additionally offer that information. Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Director Williams. That was good information, and thank you for putting in that perspective. There are two elements to the $6.5 million. One, 4.8 is public safety, roll patrol. The other 1.7 is, I'll just call it courthouse futures. Based upon that, I would potentially entertain a motion to amend to reduce the 1.7 from the budget, and just take the 4.8 million, which is rural patrol, and use that from the general fund reserve and remaining from the road fund, cutting my entire ask from 6.5 million to 4.8 million. And Ms. Morkowski, you talked about the matching fund element between us and the state as we move forward with the planning for replacing or relocating administration to a different building in the next few years. So you might want to touch on that. Would we lose our ability to fulfill that obligation that we would have to the state if they gave us money for the planning and beginning of the retrofit of the new building?
Just want to clarify, Commissioner, what your proposal is. Sorry, Chair. Did you want to do that? Okay.
You're ahead of me.
Your proposal is to replace the 4.8 million for rural patrol, the 4.8 TLT, with 4.8 million from the general fund? Is that
From the
right?
general fund reserve down to 18.5, and then the balance, this reduced balance from the road fund, reduced by 1.7 million.
Yes, maybe I can clarify. I'm doing the math here on my phone. It would be just over 200,000 from the road fund. So,
If we did that way,
correct, yeah,
instead of about 1.9 million is what it would have been.
correct.
So,
Just to be clear, sorry, Chair. Your proposal is then to not fund the 1.7, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so the 1.7 is off the table at this point.
If somebody makes a motion to amend, I'm not going to amend my own motion. So the motion to amend would be to reduce by 1.7 the ask of the combination between general fund reserve and road fund reserve, reducing the amount taken from road fund reserve to 200,000 from 1.9 million.
The effective result, as I understand, is the 6.5 million in TLT would remain in reserve. The 4.8 million to the sheriff would be funded by general fund.
And reserve fund, general fund down to
The excess
8.5.
in the general fund, okay.
So we'd be reducing the budget by $1.7 million.
Chair, I have a clarifying question.
Please, Vice Chair. Yes, thank you.
Does that proposal mean that there wouldn't be 1.7 million available for planning purposes for the courthouse?
I've not heard an amendment yet, but that's what I'd suggested the amendment would be.
Okay.
So the net result, Ms. Morkowski, is that the 2%, the reserve that has been accumulated for TLT would remain intact. General fund would be reduced to 18.5, and road fund would have a far reduced commitment.
Seconder of the motion. I don't think you got a second on your amendment.
Well, yeah, thank you. I was asking for a friendly amendment, but that's, if you're not friends, that's fine.
Well, my concern is that 1.7 is very important also.
Chair,
Vice Chair.
I think I share the $1.7 million concern because we do have a commitment to those folks that are in the courthouse that we are going to plan on upgrades and changes to their space. And we had a very compelling meeting about this, actually more than one. And to amend the budget to not include that, I think would disappoint quite a few people that work out of the Justice Center there and the courthouse. So I think it's highly problematic for us not to include it in some way.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't think it's being included, so
What was that?
there's no motion to include, to reduce the 1.7, so.
Well, I've got a compromise. We'll see. And I'm going to channel Commissioner Farr when he says you're not having a good day unless everybody's a little bit mad at you. Reduce general budget to 18%, 2.7, and added the 2.7 of the non-committed, and then pull the additional 1.3 from TLT. Does that make sense, Ms. Moody?
It does.
Okay.
That's an amendment?
Well, yours didn't get seconded.
Oh, mine didn't get seconded. Oh, okay, all right. Good, I thought it had.
So that's a new motion.
I just want to clarify if Commissioner Farr's original motion got a second. Did you second the original motion?
Yes, you're
So you
correct.
may
It did
need to
get
deal with
seconded.
that.
Yes.
I'm not your county council, but that's my understanding.
It did. You are correct.
We can vote on that and yes or no on that, and then move along.
Okay. So to Commissioner Farr's original motion, which would have been 18.5 out of, down to the general fund, 2.7 of the non-committed, and 1.9 from the road fund. Made by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Lovell. We've had lots of discussion. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
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 Motion fails 2-3 with Vice Chair Buck, Commissioner Chair Senega, and Commissioner Trieger in nay. I'm starting to think it's me. So I've got a second motion, or fourth, fifth motion, whatever we're on now. Back to 18%, general fund down to 18%. Use the 2.7 of the non-committed and pull 1.3 from the TLT, out of the TLT reserve.
I think you meant the road fund.
Nope.
Okay. Say it one more time.
18%, pull the general fund down to 18%. Use the 2.7 of the non-committed, and the additional would be 1.3 from the TLT reserve.
I misheard you.
Yep. Okay. Commissioner Tree, well, we don't have a second yet.
No, well, I just want to make sure before I even consider seconding that I'm understanding this. 2.7 million of non-committed general reserve, and then reduce the general reserve down to 18% from the general reserve.
The 20% minimum.
Right.
Take it down to 18. Mhm.
So the total reduction from general reserves is,
You just want the 2% number, or you want the whole general fund reserve number?
I'm trying to understand if we're not,
Yes.
the way you said it, it sounds like we're doubling up. Non-committed general fund reserve is part of the 20%.
It is not.
It is not.
Yes, the unallocated.
That's what I needed.
2.7, just over 2.7 unallocated, yes. So maybe for clarity's sake, dipping to 18% would be just under 2.5 million additional from the general fund.
General fund reserve. So, Chair, your proposal is using a total of a little over 5 million of general fund reserve, unallocated and uncommitted and other, plus 1.3 of the TLT reserve.
Correct.
To
Void fund.
meet the obligations as outlined in the budget.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. And doesn't touch the ongoing allocation of the ongoing TLT 1 point. It's just the reserve.
Yeah, we haven't got to there yet. Yep.
That's going to be a separate, okay.
Yeah.
This is why the budget process takes many months and hours of work, because this is
Also why we have
not
public
how it's
hearings.
done. Excuse me?
That is also why we have public hearings.
We did have public hearings, correct.
And we'll respond.
Okay, do we have a second to the motion? I tried. Vice Chair.
Chair, I just want to appreciate you're trying to compromise, which was my intent originally as well. We absolutely have like competing interests at play. And I think we all want the same thing, which is to ensure the stability of the organization. And we also want to maintain our commitments to the community. I think we have to compromise as a group at some point. I really, really hate to dip below the 20% minimum reserve. I'm trying to be open to the conversation about if we did that, what we could do to replenish it. I'm not really sure what we could do to replenish it. I think I would ask staff, how would we be able to go about replenishing that? I appreciate, though, the willingness not to impact the road funds since they're already impacted externally already.
Well, and according to our agenda, we've got some future news coming with Orlandini if we get to it today. Yeah, and I do consider this an emergency. I mean, this isn't a light decision. I would prefer not to go to 18%, but we are here, and we've got a budget that needs to be approved.
Could,
Sorry.
could we perhaps ask, our staff in front of us, what could a potential plan for replenishing even look like at this point?
I was asking Christine if she has any great ideas.
We thought a lot of
What I would say is that I think that you're wrestling with some policy implications and decisions and wanting to do the right thing in all of these different places, and we don't have enough money to do all of the things we want to do and that we need to do. So that's pretty clear. So if there's a desire among the majority of the board to move in this direction, and you're concerned about getting back to a 20%, I would tell you to direct the administrator and the budget manager to work on developing a plan that we could bring back to you for consideration of what it would look like. This is something you can always reconsider in the future. It's sort of like, do you want to kick this down and make this change during the supplemental, or you want to make this change now and come back? And, I think a reasonable plan would be a 2-year. We could get there in 2 years. 1 year is going to have harder implications. So I can't sit here and tell you, well, this is what we would do, because if we had an easy plan, we would have done that already. But if you want to include that as part of a motion, or if that's what the hangup is, that you can, provide that direction to us to come back to you within a matter of time to suggest what types of options, and you can provide us direction, and we can move down that path. I don't have any specific ideas in this moment for you.
Understandable. But out of that, I did take possibly 2 years. We could get back to our set general fund.
Chair, go ahead.
Ms. Moody.
So ideas out of the box. So as I mentioned, this public safety plan is a 2-year plan. We are just adopting an annual budget. So one idea for the board to consider would be to not pull that 2.8 for the second year quite yet. Wait until we're developing the 27-28 budget. Still can give direction to the administrator that you want that funded, but give some time to find that. And then it's not pulled out of the 20% reserve.
The reason we did it as a 2-year was to be transparent about the fact that this is one time. Don't expect that every year we're going to do this, because we shouldn't do this every year. It needs to be short term. So that's the reason we proposed it as a 2-year solution, so that there was clarity around that, knowing that there's an end date to this. The risk is you do it 1 year, then you do it the next year, and then it kind of becomes the practice. So that's the concern, but I think that this idea is certainly something that you can, it's probably the path of least resistance.
Okay. Commissioner Farr. We're still looking for a second.
Okay, I'll wait for the second.
Modify the motion.
Chair,
Yes.
I think without a second or without this kind of compromise, we're probably going to be sitting here all afternoon. I would, if there's a way that we could come back with a 2-year plan to replenish reserves, I think as part of your proposal, and everything else in the budget remains the same other than the pieces that you talked about, then I could support that. But we got to have a plan, because without a plan of replenishing, we're going to have a longer term struggle with our financial stability as an organization.
So was that a second, Vice Chair?
With a plan.
With
It
a
has to have a plan.
plan is
To the motion.
Yes, to the motion.
So, Ms. Markowski, the 2.4 million, which is the second year of the $4.8 million rural patrol, doesn't come out of the reserve for a year anyway. It's still in the reserve. It's allocated, but it's in the reserve. So in reality, that 2.4 already reduces that deficit in the reserve. And what is the difference between 18% and 20%? What is the dollar amount?
2.8.
So the 2% between 18 and 20, right? Okay, not 18 and a half, is just under 2.5.
Okay, so if we reduce this to a one-year rural patrol, that's 2.4. That reduces the entire ask by 2.4 million, covers the gap.
2.8, Commissioner, is the second year, sorry.
2.8 for the second year. So then, so it reduces it by 2.2. Okay.
Still over 2, yeah.
So if you're trying, we're talking about two different things, because Commissioner Buck is talking about a 2-year plan, continuing, I think, with your original motion, with a 2-year plan, being clear about a 2-year plan. That's one idea. Your idea, Commissioner Farr, is to do 1 year, to not fund the second year, which means you're solving for 1.997 million for patrol. And if you want to include courthouse, that's 1.7. So that number is
3.7-ish.
yeah, 3.7 basically. So, so then that's the question. You take the 2.7 of the excess reserve, and then you're $1 million away. Do you want to just take that out of the 20%? Make sense what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah. Which really essentially leaves the reserves intact at very close to 20%.
And then we funded rural patrol for 1 year. We'll have, in the development of the 27, 28 budget, we'll have to solve that and bring.
And if somebody wants to come forward and say that comes out of TLT, well, that'll be the decision at that time.
I'm probably not going to
on
make
all of
that
the other things.
recommendation next.
Well, based on all of the other things in front of us. I'm not suggesting that by any stretch of the imagination, but that does solve the dipping below, dipping 2 points below 20%. That keeps us very close to the 20%. So everybody is satisfied at close to 20%. We have rural patrol for a year, and we have the courthouse funding,
And we haven't touched TLT
and we haven't touched TLT.
or road funds. Short-term win.
Okay. Does that sound like the motion that's been made?
Well, my motion is still on the table. So all those in favor,
So
Commissioner Buck seconded it.
Commissioner Buck seconded, if you add to the motion with a plan to, and what I'm hearing is the proposed plan is to make it for 1 year? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, that's an idea.
Yeah.
But I think the chair still has the motion on the table to vote on.
Right, well, yes, but Commissioner Buck, I wasn't clear whether she actually seconded or seconded with the addition to the motion that there be the replenishment plan.
I was considering second if there was a plan, but this one, now that we're talking more, might be better. So I'm willing to talk it out.
So there is no.
Okay. Motion died. Perfect.
So I'll make a motion if Ms. Moody will read it for me. To put all into speculation, that it is essentially we would be funding the rural patrol at 1.9992 million instead of the 4.8, and that would use the general fund excess reserve of $2.7 million, and any beyond that would come from general fund reserve built to take it below 20%, whatever small fractional amount that may be, which is inherently, and that is we're only funding rural patrol for 1 year, but this board understands that we need to fund rural patrol in perpetuity. So we'll be revisiting that during the next budget cycle.
Is that a formal motion? Sound like conversation. I want to make sure we're on a motion.
Does it sound clear to you that it's a motion to fund rural patrol for 1 year and to take the funds out, 2.7 out of general fund excess reserve? It's not excess, it's just beyond the 20%. And that any beyond that takes us below the 20% reserve policy, and that's just a relatively small amount, maybe as much as $0.2 million.
Correct, Commissioner Farr, and that maintains the money going into the capital fund, the 1.7.
Yes.
Yes.
And the TLT reserve remains intact, a bank account intact.
Yes, that does make sense to me.
Second?
I have a motion made by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Discussion?
Could I just hear the motion back and since you said Director Moody would read it, could you, the most concise version so I can really understand what this motion is doing, please?
Sure. So the motion would eliminate the transfer from the TLT reserve. It would fund the first year of Sheriff's Office patrol, which is just under $2 million, $1,997,919 to be exact. We would also dip into general fund reserves. Anything that's unallocated, we would take the 2.7. We would fund the courthouse complex at the just over 1.7 million, 1,732,815. And anything that's needed in order to make those numbers work would come out of the 20%, potentially taking us just barely below 20%.
That's exactly what I said.
So the difference between this motion and what's in the budget, other than the sourcing of the money, other than using transient lodging taxes, we've now reduced our commitment of rural patrol down to 1 year from 2.
Correct.
And the sourcing of the funds for everything else stays the same, does not use transient lodging tax. So we are preserving funds for a project we have not yet committed to, voted on, heard about, but we're reducing our general fund reserves below what is generally recognized as standard best practice, and we're reducing our commitment to rural patrol by a year.
Those are the numbers.
Thank you.
Chair?
Vice Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to support this motion. I think it leaves some outstanding issues for us as a board to deal with in the near future, which is we all have a commitment to continue rural patrol. And so we're going to have to deal with that in the next budget cycle, obviously, since this will be 1 year. And then we're going to have to revisit our commitment for the courthouse and its ongoing planning and funding for updates. So I would just say we need to make sure that that's on our agendas in the future to ensure that we continue to work towards those commitments while also trying to be as responsible as possible with all of our discussions here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any further discussion of the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Trieger in nay. Thank you, Ms. Moody. Mr. Hurley, Chief of Staff Williams.
Was there another, there's no other, yeah.
Well, there still would be the motion to adopt the budget, yes. You do have additional, I will just point them out like I usually do. There's an attachment to your memo that indicates the changes that departments are making. So there is reduction of FTE occurring in the community health centers and some other movement of FTE, and then just having the latest, greatest. You heard about the supplemental 4 rebudgeting this morning, so some of that is coming forward into the 26-27 budget.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Chair, do you want me to attempt something?
If you would like to online, yes, Vice Chair.
All right, I'll move approval of the Lane County budget for the 2027 fiscal year as amended. Hopefully that works.
I'll clear it up over here. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion made by Vice Chair to approve Order 2606-2313 in the matter of adopting the 26-27 Lane County budget, making appropriations and imposing and categorizing taxes as amended, seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, next up, I believe we have Keir Miller coming up for first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing ordinance 2604. This is the time to set for the first reading and ordinance 2604. Is there a request from any commissioner to read the ordinance in full? If not, I will read it by title only. Okay, not hearing any request. In the matter of amending the Land Management Division's building program fee schedule. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Chair Senega, and good afternoon, Commissioners. This item includes a first reading and setting of the second reading and public hearing for ordinance number 26-04, which proposes amendments to the Land Management Division's building program fee schedule. As the board is aware, the division operates under an enterprise funding model and relies primarily on user fees to support services. Over time, those fees have not kept pace with rising costs, resulting in a structural deficit within our budget. To help stabilize the division's financial position and preserve capacity necessary to support timely, predictable permitting processes and housing objectives, the board directed the division last year to implement a 3-year incremental fee increase strategy. The ordinance before you represents the second phase of that strategy. It includes the second annual 7% incremental increase in base fees along with a 2.5% CPI adjustment for a total proposed adjustment of 9.5%. This step continues our gradual approach to aligning fees with the actual cost of service while easing cost impacts over a 3-year period. A complete presentation of the proposed fee adjustments will be provided on July 14th. If approved, following the public hearing, the amended fee schedule would take effect September 1st, 2026. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay. This is simply a first reading. The board is reminded that any substantive questions for staff or discussion on this matter should be reserved until the second reading and public hearing. This is so that any members of the public with an interest in this matter will have the benefit of hearing those discussions. That said, are there any logistical or non-substantive questions for the board at this time? Okay, I'll ask for a motion on this matter.
Chair, I'd like to approve the first reading and set the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 26-04 in the matter of amending the Land Management Division's building program fee schedule.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Lovell approve the first reading, setting the second reading and public hearing on ordinance 2604 in the matter of amending the Land Management Division's building program fee, seconded by Commissioner Trieger. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. The second reading and public hearing on ordinance 2604 is set for July 14th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. Harris Hall. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Mr. Orlandini, discussion on the matter of raising disposal fees and making transfer station adjustments for the Lane County Solid Waste Services. Jeff, you've got about 31 minutes.
Okay,
I apologize for that.
I will speak as quickly as possible.
I'm teasing, we got time. Take as long as we need to get these things done.
I can go through that one, but Okay, had to get set up here. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, Chair Senega, Board, we're here to talk about adjustments to the waste management budget to get in line with the approved county budget. So we're looking for $3 million is where is our target. I want to reiterate that today the board's not making any decisions, final decisions. There's not a board order. We're simply presenting some options and then asking for feedback and direction from the board to come back at a later date with final options and a board order. So I will start with just a general overview of the division, which I think helps the public understand what we do. We'll discuss our current budget situation, an overview of proposed savings and fee adjustments, and then we'll end with the 4 options that we've presented that you have seen in the packet. So briefly, we serve as a solid waste authority, the Solid Waste Authority for municipal solid waste in Lane County. We're an enterprise fund, meaning we're solely funded through the fees that we collect, and some of those things that we provide are the recycling services, the waste reduction education services, or household hazardous waste, and of course the transfer station system, which will be a main topic of our conversation today. As you know, we also own and operate the Short Mount landfill out in the, near Goshen, and are responsible for all of the associated regulations around managing the landfill. And we have those capital projects, which are construction of those new cells as well as closure of completed cells. So on the right there, you can see a picture of the final closure of the cell 5. And then on the left, you can see some of the construction activities around developing those cells. So our budget overview. So this is kind of the standard budget page that we see that shows the FTE equivalent, the required resources and revenue. There is the little note around $15 million, and both of those large numbers are earmarked for construction of Clean Lane. That's revenue that would be acquired through the issuing of the bond. And so that's why those numbers are that high. Our structural operating deficit currently is $3 million. We wanted to just be clear and transparent that we also typically make $2 million of contributions to landfill projects that we'll look at next. So really our combined deficit in normal times would be $5 million. Again, our goal today, and when we come back in a couple weeks, is to get structurally balanced, and so it's that 3 million number. And we'll talk a little bit about why we're looking at 3 and not 5 as we move through the presentation. So again, we're talking about the structural operating deficit and then the annual contributions. We typically contribute $1.5 million a year to our cell development to build the next phase of the landfill, and we contribute about $500,000 to our closure and post-closure funds. We are finding now that our closure and post-closure are adequately funded right now, but we will need to start making those contributions so that we don't fall behind there. And we're woefully behind in our cell development fund, and we'll talk about that as well. So this is where we get into those reserve accounts, just so you can see what our closure and post-closure. Just for clarity, closure projects are those ones when we do, like we showed you the pictures of when we close cell 5, that's a construction project that closes it. Essentially, if we were to close Short Mount landfill tomorrow, we need to have enough money to close the active cells permanently, and then the post-closure is to monitor the landfill for 35 years after final closure. That's starts when we close all landfill operations. And then our cell development currently is not funded. We are probably looking at $18 million to construct the next cell, and that would begin in 2028 if our waste that is being exported comes back. If it continues the way it is now, we're probably buying ourselves another year and looking at 2029 to start doing that. We can construct that in 2 phases. So you can split that into 2 phases and roughly half the amount each construction season. You may even be able to do half the cell and buy a couple years before you need the other half. So that 18 million would be great to have in that fund right now. 9 would probably be the minimum that we'd want to be able to construct. We are highlighting waste exportation. It's not a focus of our conversation today. The results of negotiations with Waste Connections will, when those are complete, we will come back to the board to adjust the rates on what we are calling the hauler tonnage fee. So nothing we're talking about today would impact what commercial haulers pay to dispose of waste, because we're negotiating that portion. And so we will come back to the board once those negotiations are complete to determine what those adjustments would be based on whether waste is going to return or not. And that would be money that then we would look at to help fund those landfill reserve accounts to kind of balance those back out. So that's why we're only talking about 3 today. We're talking about what we can do in the next couple of weeks to become structurally balanced. Just for clarity, this is what all of the budget options will show. And so they all have these 5 elements in them to varying degrees. So I want to talk about those different areas. So our minimum fee is currently $15. It is the lowest of our comparators by quite a bit. And so we will be talking about 2 different options for raising that minimum fee. The reason we came with those 2 options was we felt as staff that a $5 and a $10 change would be as high as we would want to go from a customer standpoint, from hitting somebody from going from $15 to $25. Doesn't mean that that's the only way we can do it, but those are the options that we've kind of presented to show, and you can see what the totals are if you do a $5 versus the $10, with, again, that goal of getting to $3 million total. Then we have fee increases. All of you have been here for a while and know that we typically do annual CPI-based increases whenever possible. And then we do sometimes go above the CPI, and sometimes, like COVID, we don't do a fee increase. So these are what we're used to doing. We apply them typically across the board to all fees. These proposals, they're not being applied to the ton fee that haulers pay at the landfill. That's why when you look at the percentages, these numbers are smaller than you might normally expect, because they're not applying to really the largest element of our system, which is what commercial haulers pay at the landfill. We've done a CPI of 2.5, a 5%, and a 9% are the 3 that we've provided. And when we get in the options, you can kind of see how we've chosen to place those. We are showing eliminating the recycling rebate. This is a rebate that originally was put on the waste to incentivize folks to do the right thing and recycle back when recycling was kind of new and when waste weight rates were really low. We do not find that folks are choosing to recycle only because they get $1 off now. They're choosing so they don't pay more for the waste that they're disposing of. So we're looking at removing the recycle rebate. We would still maintain that senior rebate. So we currently offer 2 different ones. We would still maintain the senior rebate. And we're looking at our contributions to the climate program funding, which currently stand at $232 that go into the policy department. So those 2 equal a little over $400,000 in terms of the savings. I do just want to show, before we talk about transfer stations, a map of where the transfer stations are located, which I think comes into play as we look at transfer station adjustments. And we'll show this again later in the presentation. We have a couple slides that just show the usage per transfer station and the net loss for those transfer stations. And so this is basically after all of the revenue they bring in and the cost for us just to do operations. This is just to staff the facility and to transport materials. This doesn't take into account vandalism and upkeep and maintenance, things like that. This is just the hard costs. We're trying to be able to have very hard numbers that we can rely on. And so it just shows you across the board the losses. Typically, we're finding that the larger losses tend to be the locations that are farther away from the landfill. It's a higher cost to get materials from across the county over to the landfill. The only, yeah.
Just describe how, if you close one, the connection between loss and.
Yeah, and so the other thing to note, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we get into options, is that you kind of have two options. You could try to raise rates to make a landfill break even. So in the case of, say, Walton, we could raise rates at Walton enough to recoup the $32,000 that we're losing from those, servicing those 773 customers. Or you could close that transfer station, eliminate the operations. For knowledge, when we have shown on here any savings, we've done an 80% reduction in operations, knowing that that waste is going to go somewhere else. And that's going to burden another transfer station, and therefore that station may need some more resources. So we've not done a one-to-one that the complete operations at that transfer station be eliminated. We've done an 80% reduction. But that revenue then moves, and so it's not that if you close Walton, you're not saving $32,000, you're saving more than that, and we'll show that when we look at transfer station closures. The other note is that Glenwood, we are doing the numbers, do apples to apples, strictly like the other transfer stations. This is assuming this profit, if you will, the net revenue, is if all we did at Glenwood was operate a transfer station, and none of our other operations there were occurring. We didn't have a fuel line, didn't have a mechanic shop, didn't have our offices there, didn't have the hazardous waste facility. If it was strictly a transfer station, if you were to close Glenwood and move it down the road and open it as just a transfer station, based on the current usage, it would make a profit. But we do have other services at Glenwood that, use some of those. So it's not necessarily a one-to-one there, but just didn't want to muddy that by putting too much complication. So it shows the net is just south of $1 million in terms of what we lose across the transfer station system if they were to just operate as transfer stations. So when we look at all those elements, and we kind of take, from the low end to the high end in terms of what we're looking at for adjustments. If you did everything at the lowest end, it would get us a little north of $2 million. If you did everything at the highest end, it would get us a little north of $4 million. So that's the range that we're talking about. We have provided only options that are $3 million or more, because that's what we need to get to in order to be, to be structurally balanced. So these are the options that were in the packet. So option 1 is a 2.5%. That's a CPI increase across the board, a $10 minimum fee increase, and then all the other elements basically stay the same for the first 3 options. You can see on here, taking Cresswell, for example, that while it's only losing money a little north of $100,000, if you close that transfer station and that waste goes either 10 miles south or 11 miles north to one of those other transfer station options, with eliminating 80% of the operations and taking that revenue elsewhere, it's really a $550,000 swing. So that's one of the reasons why we've chosen these 3 transfer stations in particular, are that Walton is very close to Veneta, a major city near them, and then Cresswell is very close to 2 other transfer stations that are either north or south of it and operate either the same hours and days or more. And so it's from a location standpoint, it would make sense more so than, say, Marcola, and folks having to travel from Marcola to another location, or Vida. So that's why we put that on there. I do want to say that this gets us at $3.4 million. And so these all have a little bit of wiggle room if you were assuming that the board may provide some direction for us to come back with based on these options. Our second option is basically the same, but gets us more revenue because it does a 5% fee increase and keeps that $10 minimum. We kept the $10 minimum because if you go to 5, it then doesn't pencil out. So this one strictly just gives us a little more revenue. And then the third option flips it and says you do the lower minimum fee increase, but you do a bigger increase across the board on fees. And so folks that use our transfer stations and are typically bringing in the minimum amount of waste would then see a smaller increase on what they're doing, while there's a larger increase across the board to all the other fees. And again, those other options are all the same. The last option was one that's presented by the budget committee. Reached out to us and someone said, they had analyzed it and said, what if we did this option? And that was the highest on the fee increase, the minimum fee, and then closing all those sites that had under 5,000 customers per year and were open typically only usually just 1 day a week. And then they also asked for some adjustments to sites. And so we included the Veneta adjustment in there, making that a Wednesday to Saturday site like most of the other sites. This is about a 4.1, I think it was $4.07 million revenue gain, and obviously the most extreme from the disruption of our transfer station system. And again, we can look at those transfer stations and where they're located, and so that would be one that gets us much closer to where we need to be if you're looking at contributions to the landfill, but also hugely impactful on our system. And while our transfer station system is the most robust in Oregon and possibly anywhere that I'm aware of in the country, it is what our community is used to. It is what we've been doing for a long time. And so, we understand there's a lot of pushback from community members when you look at a lot of transfer station adjustments. And I will finish my part and take questions just by saying our goal is to receive feedback from the board on what you'd like to see from us coming back, whether that's one of these options in a modified manner. It could just be bring back these options with a board order and make a decision. We're working to do that depending on your recommendations, either on the 7th or 14th. We would request that we get at least a month notice to be able to give customers of these changes. And so that does mean that we would not make these changes July 1, but we believe it's only fair to customers, and remembering that it's only impacting customers at transfer stations and not haulers at the landfill needing to make adjustments to what they charge customers curbside, because those are not part of this. And so this is really for the customers using the transfer stations. And then we would, again, return later in the year to the board after those negotiations with Waste Connections are complete to let you know what the proposal is and approve or deny that, or what those adjustments need to be based on the outcome of those negotiations. Happy to take questions or comments.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. To the board, any questions? Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for a number of options. Some of them are more subtly different than others. But I do notice every single one of them includes climate program funding decrease of $232,000. That is a position. Is that right?
Correct, and the proposal in the budget was that you just approved was to move that position, the funding from that position from the Waste Management Fund to the Video Lottery Fund. So we will continue, that position is housed in the policy team, and it will continue to operate, but it will be funded by Video Lottery, which is also a fairly scarce resource at this point, but yeah.
And it's sort of unstable, unreliable, but okay, just making sure it's not, yeah, great, thank you. And then the only other question for the moment, and I'll give if you're looking for direction or which option is landing best with me. My only other observation before I do that is you mentioned ongoing Waste Connections, negotiations with Waste Connections Incorporated, Sanapak. Are there ongoing negotiations? My understanding, we received a letter that described our proposal to reduce our tipping fee, for example. I know we're not talking about that, but the letter said, we made an offer to reduce that. They call it a conceptual proposal, but it was an offer, and my understanding is it hasn't been responded to. So is there something different when you say ongoing negotiations? Are there negotiations? My understanding is they're not being responsive to our outreach and our offers.
My understanding, and Council Bovet may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, is that we did receive a response to what you just mentioned, and that we did respond back to them and are waiting from them, stating that it wasn't conceptual, that this is the offer on the table, and that we'd like to hear back on if that is amenable to them or not. Is that correct?
That's a pretty darn good summary. I did respond. We provided them additional information. We even gave them a link to where they could watch essentially a show before the board explaining all of the things that pretty much answered most of their questions, also reconveying the same offer that we made. And I may be viewing this incorrectly, and I'm happy to be corrected, but I almost view the letter we received from the Haulers Association as kind of addressing issues. It's just very slow, would be the way to put it.
Okay. Well, then, all that being said, if we were picking, I think of the options before us, option 2, I don't like the option that has the greater number of transfer stations closing. I think that impact would be felt deeply by community and would have ripple effects. Option 2, I like because prices are not going down. Resources are not becoming more abundant. And so making one jump in increase that's a little bit greater to give us the greatest cushion, the greatest opportunity to stabilize one time rather than death by 1,000 cuts to our customers, doing one increase and then potentially having to go back to do another or find some Band-Aid somewhere else because we didn't do everything we could the first time, makes the most sense to me. Thank you.
And I would note that I believe in 2014, we were in a predicament where, we were trying to also get our landfill reserves caught up, and the community overwhelmingly told us to do a larger increase and keep services. I believe we went from $7 to $10 at that point. So a similar-ish, increase, yeah.
Yeah, I think people would rather have to adjust and swallow hard once, a little bigger than multiple times over closer together increments. So that's my direction or my input. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm in agreement with Commissioner Trieger on option 2. I think, that stabilization, little cushion's kind of nice. But then in the back of my head, I keep bringing back that we also increased customer rates, and that was through the haulers at 22% for the last 2 years for the Clean Lane project. So does this come on top of the backs twice on top of our customers?
If I'm hearing you correctly, we did do 11% increases each of the last 2 years. Yes, 8%, 3% for the CPI, the rest for Clean Lane for the last 2 years, and then this is an additional fee increase, yes.
Right, and so
Oh, yeah, so thank you, the last 2 fee increases were across the board, all users, including commercial haulers.
So both customers, normal customers like me who take their trash in the back of their Subaru or whatever we got, and the haulers got those increases across the board. Okay, that's fine. And then, so now we're saying that we're going to increase customers' prices, and yet in our previous discussions, we still don't have enough revenue because of what's been missing going to Dry Creek to fund our Clean Lane project. So it seems to me like this is kind of, although it solves one problem, it still doesn't solve the bigger issue. Is that really what we're after? So my question is, are we going to have to come back in 3 months or so when we get some Clean Lane issues worked out that we're going to have to increase fees again just to fund the Clean Lane project?
Right now, the intent is to come back when the negotiations end and determine the situation we're in. I don't know if those things would coincide or not, but yes, this is to get us structurally balanced today, and then we will be coming back in some way, shape, or form in the future around that hauler fee.
So it may not be death by 1,000 cuts, but we got a few more coming.
Might be.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Follow up to that?
Please, yeah.
No, I'm a little
Commissioner Trieger.
confused because Commissioner Lovell was saying to cover the Clean Lane project, but in fact, the waste deportation, the waste diversion happening by Waste Connections is undercutting this system, regardless of Clean Lane.
Yes.
It is undercutting our waste because the system benefit fee pays for the system, and half of the tipping fee goes to the system benefit fee. And the system is the transfer stations, and the system is the household hazardous waste roundups, and the system is the property mitigation and the system. So the waste diversion is undercutting our system with or without Clean Lane. We would be facing.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Farr.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Orlandini. You know, I saw this presentation last Thursday afternoon as I was sitting in Notai in the car, and so I heard all the presentation. And just a clarification on this transfer station cost and usage, and Commissioner Trieger just mentioned the system benefit fee has been covering our losses on this. So, for instance, let's take Cresswell alone. In Cresswell, we've been losing, if I'm reading this right, $113,000 a year servicing Cresswell with transfer station. $113,000 a year, so over 10 years, that's over $1 million. Okay, and the other point that I want to make is one that you made regarding the nature of our transfer station network. It's unparalleled. There's nothing like it. As far as you know, you said any place in the nation, there may be, but certainly within visible distance, West Coast, Oregon, we have the transfer sites that Douglas County, for instance, doesn't have, even though it has a larger rural area than Lane County has. Douglas County doesn't have transfer sites. And so we've been paying for these transfer sites, this added benefit to the people who use our system, who are being, I use it, I use Veneta myself occasionally. So I've been underpaying. You've been subsidizing me using Veneta. Thank you. That's very generous of you. But in the meantime, because we're not getting a full measure of all Lane County's trash generated in Lane County isn't going to Short Mountain, Lane County's own landfill that the people sitting in this room own, we're having to consider not subsidizing the transfer stations anymore.
Right, certainly at the level that we're used to, correct?
Okay, because we wouldn't be thinking about this if all Lane County's trash was generated in Lane County was going to Short Mountain.
Or if the system benefit fee was being paid on all those tons that leave, correct?
Correct. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. I knew that, and you know, it's something that we've talked about quite often. But people should really fully understand that the decisions that we're making right now, we would rather not be making these decisions. These aren't decisions that we wanted to. We didn't seek having to close Cresswell at $113,000 a year. It was forced upon us. It was brought to the table by somebody else and said, "Here's your problem. Take care of it." Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if Vice Chair wants to say anything or not.
Sure, I'll take a shot. Question is on the recycling rebate elimination. That particular rebate, I think, is an incentive for people to come and bring their recycling in instead of throwing it away in the landfill. Am I missing something there? Because that incentive, I think, is really important. Other than that, I think I understand the outline of your options available.
Yes, I think that our assessment would be that you're absolutely correct. Originally, that was its intent. We have not felt recently that, and I guess it would only be anecdotally, that people don't show up with their recycling and we say, hey, you could throw it away or you could save $1. They're typically, the way the transfer stations are set up, and most of them, you know, that recycling's kind of first. You go to that area, you recycle, it's free, and people tend to want to do that to reduce the cost of disposal. So we don't feel that it's the same motivating factor that it used to be.
Okay, I appreciate that clarifying amount. Otherwise, I can understand the options available. If option 2 is where we're leaning, I do appreciate you being willing to give people notice. And with the fee increase of $10, let's say for option 2, we're still well below our comparator counties. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So can you, I mean, I think we're all on board with option 1 or 2. I mean, it sounds like pretty consensus decision, but I have a question. Can you dive a little bit more into the transfer stations? You know, closing all those transfer stations, just looking at the map, but even though Jared's back there, good job, Jared. It was, you know, if you look out Highway 36, somebody in Swiss Home, if we close Swiss Home, Low Pass, I mean, they're going to Florence or Veneta, and that's a long, that's a pretty long distance. I would start getting nervous about trash ending up in places it shouldn't. But with you know, with this kind of entry-level approach here and closing minimal stations, I don't see that happening as much. I think the people that are going to do it are going to do it regardless. But the numbers are kind of confusing, and you explained it a little bit with the 80%, and then that revenue is going to go somewhere else, but it's not really relative per customer that comes in. Some of them have a larger jump than others. What do you attribute to that?
A larger jump in terms of?
Cost versus what it'll save?
Yeah, I think that on the transfer stations that we've shown, in particular, if we're talking closures with Walton and Cresswell, we feel very confident that those. So when we look at what we do it based on the tons that are transported. We believe that waste will go to another transfer station. Those same customers would go to the other transfer station and dump relatively the same amounts. And so we do think that revenue would flow to those. I don't know if that would be the case if you did the wholesale closed all those other transfer stations in option 4. We may not be able to count on that the same way, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, and so, yes, I mean, that's part of it. But then I'm looking at like McKenzie Bridge customers, you know, 2,250, a net loss of 39,000. And then the customers at Swiss Home, 2,115, net loss of 44. Is that, when you came up with that net loss, it doesn't appear that you just put a certain number per customer?
No. So we did the actual revenue for that site, the revenue it took in through all of the fees charged, and then what it costs us for our operations to move all of those materials, including recyclables. So recyclables come in for free, and they're not free to transport to the other locations. And so that's money in for that particular site and the costs for us to operate that site and move those materials.
Okay. So, and then in that calculation, I assume it's how far away is the transfer station from Short Mountain and those kind of things?
Yes, so our cost is strictly, you can tell that, you know, Florence is always going to be the highest cost because it goes from everywhere. Now, we do some cost-saving things like Swiss Home. We'll pick up waste at Swiss Home and bring it to Florence so that we can put it in a bigger trailer and bring it up so we're not going from there. So that it would cost you more to operate Swiss Home if you didn't have Florence, for example. But yeah, so we try to do some of that when we can.
Okay. That's great math, and that's the things that we don't know sitting up here or the customers out in the field don't know, so, okay. Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Two last quick questions. Regarding Douglas County, if I live in Scottsburg or Elkton or Drain or Gardner or Winchester Bay, I don't have a transfer site. Okay, and we do have transfer sites. Now, the other question that I have is I live in Eugene, so in Eugene, I pay the system benefit fee in Eugene. People in Springfield, whether they're paying it or not, we don't get it. Right, so I'm already subsidizing all these, my fee that I'm paying is already subsidizing our transfer stations. I'm cool with that. The other question that I have is about twice a year, sometimes maybe even 3 times a year, I take rattle cans and cans of paint and nasty stuff that I spray in the yard with. I don't take a lot of that stuff, but you know, a couple of 3 times a year, I'll go and take a box or 2 of it. I don't get charged for that. Who pays for that?
Right, that's part of the system benefit fee.
So people in Springfield probably do take their hazardous waste there.
Yeah, everyone in the county can use that for free.
Everyone in the county uses the hazardous waste for free, and it's pretty robust. Okay, good, thank you.
Just a side note, Elkton does have a transfer station in Douglas County.
Thank you.
They have a bunch of them. They have about 11.
They do have 11 interns. Okay. What about hazardous waste?
Do you pay for them?
Okay, anybody else? You have good direction there, Jeff? What do you
Yes,
think?
my only question would be, I don't know that we heard everyone. It seems like the majority were saying option 2 as it was written. I'm just wondering if that is a come back to the board with a board order? Should we put that on consent calendar because there's consensus around option 2 as it stands? Just looking for the best direction. I only ask because it would be the quickest, obviously, to do a consent and then give notice, but not my decision.
Well, I think it's probably looks at Vice Chair and I the most, it'll be our districts that are actually taking these cuts. I would like to see it come back, Jeff, just to make sure we're as thorough as we can and we get
Sure.
everybody's input. I don't know if Vice Chair has thoughts on that.
That makes sense. Come back and chat about it one last time.
And then if any commissioners individually have questions or concerns, they can always reach out to you.
Certainly. Okay, we'll plan to come back. We'll aim for the 7th, if not the 14th.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, moving forward, County Administrator, we skipped you back when we were at County Admin. Do you have any announcements?
No.
Okay. On to Commissioners. Commissioners, do we have any announcements? Go ahead.
Just quick question, Chair. I mean, do we have time for those, or mine can wait another week, honestly?
If it can wait, that'd be ideal.
Okay,
but
I'll
we-
wait. Thank you.
Okay. Any Commissioner comments, remonstrance, committee reports? Yes.
Just one, our OHA, our LGAC meeting, Local Government Advisory Committee meeting, meets this Friday at the Barbara Roberts Building in Salem. And Director Gray is a member of that committee. She will not be there. And Dr.
Director?
Thank you, yes. We'll be replacing Director Gray in that meeting. So that meeting is going to be televised, so you can watch it online. It will be broadcast online, so you can watch that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, any future board assignments? Seeing none, I will read us into executive session. We will be back here in Harris Hall on July 7th. The Board of County Commissioners will now meet in one executive session. The session is to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection and to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. It is held pursuant to ORS 192-6602F and ORS 192-6602H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video, record, or otherwise record an executive session. Verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision may be made in executive session. And let's get started at 3:45.